Hey, everybody. This is Jon McNaughton. Welcome to my studio. And today I'm with my good friend Seth Adam Smith. And we are going to be chit-chatting about paintings, about sketches, about what's going on in the country. And the topic of today has to do with the civil rights era and racism, something that just seems to be talked about all the time. And honestly, it kind of gets on my nerves sometimes the way the word is used so frequently. If I had a nickel for every time somebody called me a racist because I like Trump, I'd be a rich man. So yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I did some sketches today, and Seth, why don't you put that one up? I did one. I finally did one of Martin Luther King, and it's not the first time that I've painted or drawn Martin Luther King. I actually, when my very first political painting that I ever did, I talk about it sometimes. The One Nation Under God, which is the painting. The original is right here next to me. Big painting. When I first did that painting, I actually painted and included Martin Luther King in the work. But when I did some research, I found out that the King Foundation would charge me a hefty amount of money to include Martin Luther King. I couldn't afford it. I mean, every time somebody puts up a big sculpture of Martin Luther King in a city somewhere, they have to pay the foundation hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I wasn't even going to go there.
That's not something most people understand, is that the King Foundation has a tight hold on the image and name of Martin Luther King.
Well, the image, the video, anything. Like anytime a TV network wants to do anything on Martin Luther King, they got to pay for it. And that's kind of a unique and rare thing. You don't see that in the public domain with political figures. You'll see it with, say, movie stars, like John Wayne and Marlon Brando and stuff like that. But with political figures, it's usually that's not the case. But in this case, it is. So occasionally, I'll paint him or draw him. But what I did in the One Nation Under God, here's a little section of the picture. You see the black soldier. Originally, that was Martin Luther King. And can you show the full painting, Seth? The One Nation Under God.
I don't, but I can enlarge this.
Oh, you don't have the full image?
I don't have it ready to go. I can try to find one for you.
Oh, okay.
Let me go ahead and try to find one for you. But keep talking.
Well, so you can see behind the black soldier is JFK, and I felt like that was a good combination because the two of them were important people during the whole civil rights era of the 1960s. And it was such a important and kind of a complicated time in our U.S. history when the country was kind of going through the throes of change in a lot of people's perception of what is race and racism. And I think that there were some good things that came out of that. And so I felt like it was important to do those sketches. I also wanted to point out, and this is why I was thinking of showing the full painting of One Nation Under God, is that, some people don't like particular historical figures because they don't think that they're either moral or worthy to be, amongst other founding fathers. They're not righteous enough, And I was thinking as I painted this that the only truly righteous person in the painting is Jesus Christ. The rest of them are imperfect people. But what makes this country pretty remarkable is the Constitution that we follow that really protects the rights of individuals. When I bring that up sometimes to people, that the Constitution, I believe, is divinely inspired, and when I talk like that, sometimes when I'm talking to liberals particularly, they get a little bit irritated, and they're like, well, what about the 3/5 clause? I mean, they didn't even consider black people to be a full person. And, that's true. That was part of a compromise that the some of the founders made with some of the other leaders in order to pass the Constitution and bring the states together. But the beauty of the Constitution is that we do have the ability to amend it. And after the Civil War, which was we were the first country to ever fight a war over the topic of slavery. It was related to states' rights, but slavery mostly, and that led to the 16th Amendment. And so it's really beautiful, what this country has been able to do in the area of civil rights, and I felt like it was important to draw that picture.
And so I got the full painting for you. You see it
Yeah,
right
yeah. So if you look on there, you see all the different people, just all the different founders and different soldiers and people that have had an impact on the country. And you can see in that top right corner, that's where Martin Luther King was. So yeah, that's been an important painting for me. Can you pull up the other sketch I just did today of JFK? So I've done a few different sketches of John F. Kennedy, and I think that he's an interesting political figure. His tragic death, his assassination, but he really spearheaded the space race and was involved in a lot of the civil rights movements. And he wasn't popular with Republicans at the time. But in retrospect, the guy's more like a Republican today than a Democrat would be.
Well,
But
yeah, the mere fact that he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." I mean, that's the antithesis. That's totally opposite of what the Democrat Party
yeah,
would
that's
ask
not
for.
the Democrat Party today at all. But I found this kind of cool quote that I put with his picture. And when I do these sketches in my sketchbook, I always do that. Thanks. C. Mulcahy? Did I say that right? Thank you. So this quote says, "A nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors, the men it remembers." And I think that's cool. And I think you would include women too.
What made
But
you think of that quote, and what prompted you to illustrate JFK?
well, I like some of the quotes. There was quite a few quotes to choose from, but I think about American history and what sets one country aside from another, and I think it's. I mean, we're judged by the kind of people that come out of this country, And I look at some of my heroes of the past, different the founders, some of the great scientists, the great explorers. And I know that America doesn't have the complete monopoly on that, but there's been some amazing people that have come out of this country. And I wonder if the caliber of the young people coming up today are going to be able to meet that same level of success and greatness. And so when I saw that quote, it kind of made me think about, how important it is that we remember, who the great ones were and not forget what they've given to our country. Kind of like why I painted the One Nation Under God painting is, remember the people of the past that have sacrificed so much for our country. They're speaking from the dust. And so that's why I chose the quote. And and I chose to draw JFK and Martin Luther King just because I was thinking about the civil rights era and this whole thing about racism. It just literally drives me nuts. You know,
Yeah, yeah, we were talking a little bit before the show about how so much of the conversation during the actual civil rights movement was, "Hey, judge me by my character, not by the color of my skin."
yeah, well, that's from
Whereas,
the famous speech that Martin Luther King gave. That's
mhm,
what he said. And I mean, that just seems to be completely forgotten by, a lot of the race baiters today. It's like you're not judged by the color of your skin. You're completely judged by the color of your skin, not your character. I mean, I am a racist because not only am I a Trump supporter, but because I'm white. I mean, there's people that are saying the moment you're born, if you're white, you're a racist. However, when I hear about Asians getting attacked in San Francisco because they're Asian, getting beat up, it's happening in other places. I hear about white people that get, sucker punched and beat up simply because they're white. I mean, that's absolute racism. I don't think you can be racist just because you have some perceived privilege that other people think they don't have. I think that there's white trash, there's brown trash, there's black trash, and I mean there's bad people and there's good people of all colors of skin, and the whole topic just irritates me to no end.
The
So
white trash. Have you seen the Babylon Bee skit they did where it was two redneck guys, but it's the guys who run the show,
mhm.
and they're pretending to be rednecks, and they're just sitting there like, I've been told I have privilege. What's my privilege? What am I like? The whole skit is about them talking about, are we racist? Are we?
Do we
Are
have
we really?
privilege?
Yeah, like I don't feel like I'm really that racist. Yeah, it's shocking. It's shocking to see people really dig their heels in on, hey, let's look at somebody and make judgments based upon how their skin looks, and then when you point that out, they will, like I said, they'll dig their heels in and say, no, here are all these very logical reasons why. Here's my reasoning for why you should judge somebody on the basis of the color of skin, and it's just
Yes.
so shocking.
Well, I think that one of the beauties of our country is it is a melting pot. There are a lot of immigrants that have been coming here since the beginning. And most of the time when they first arrive here, they don't have the same opportunities. They really don't. They have to start from the bottom, and it usually takes a generation or two before you see their grandchildren start to see the success that their grandparents provided for them originally. It's not always that way, but you look at like the Italian and the German immigrants, the Irish immigrants, and they were dirt poor and they were treated like crap by a lot of the people that have been here longer when they first arrived. And I mean, you might say that that was racism, but today they're kind of dividing it up against whites versus everybody else. And I think that's wrong. And I don't, and this whole, critical race theory crap that they were trying to push through the schools. I mean, that's the most un-American, unethical, just, I mean, talk about undermining a country's success more than anything. I mean, Martin Luther King would roll over in his grave if he saw that, based on the things he said. So, just some thoughts that I've been kicking around today.
Well, Harold has sent a couple of comments here. This one's interesting. He says, "I feel the Democrat Party believe they have a lot of support this time around. I have a lady that works for me. She is a black lesbian in her late 30s. She and all her friends support the Republican Party."
You know, you know, I guess you can say that the Democrats don't hold they don't hold the monopoly on intelligence. They think they do. They think they're smarter than everyone, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, black, white. I mean, people have the ability to think through the logic and the black and white of what's true and what's not true. And I think that that's kind of what, if I had to say, if there's anything good about Biden and this administration, with the way this country's just been imploding over the last year and a half he's been in, is that people are starting to wake up and see that the policies of the Democrats and some of the things that they're pushing are the lunacy is destroying the country. The whole civil rights thing is interesting because it used to be just about race, But now it's about, I mean, when they talk about abortion and being pro-choice, they consider that a civil right. They consider transgenders being able to do women's sports as a civil right. However, I think it tramples civil rights. It
Mhm.
tramples the rights of women. It tramples the decency of our country. I just think that there's just so much insanity going on right now, and people just need to sort through it. And I don't. It's not going away, but it
There
really.
seems to be a need for actual hardship because who was I listening to today? They said, we actually need um, some amount of struggle, something to contend with. And really, we've been so richly blessed in America. We
Yeah.
really don't have that much um, authentic opposition. When you think about what people went through during the Great Depression, what people went through
Right.
during World War One and Two, I mean, we've been so blessed by what our ancestors have done for us that people are like, especially it seems the Democratic Party are actively looking for victimization, ways in which they are oppressed, and they're not coming up with anything. And that's why I just barely pulled up the Babylon Bee articles that they were they were doing, where they're making fun of AOC because she was protesting for the civil right to abort or to kill a baby. And I mean, these articles are funny, man. Here, hold on, I'll add it to the stream. Uh, like, because remember, she went there and she protested, and um, she pretended to have handcuffs on. And so you can see that article right there. It says AOC still handcuffed as Capitol Police misplaced the invisible key.
That's hilarious.
Down here, AOC sits in invisible police car awaiting transport to invisible jail. But it's just so much of the struggle that it's just smoke and mirrors. It's just, is it
Yeah, we
real?
really haven't had anything major since World War II. I mean, there's been some wars along the way, but they don't, of course they're tragic and the death and all. But as far as our country, we had Pearl Harbor, we had 9/11, we've had some mass shootings, we had some recessions, some market drops, but we haven't really had anything major. And the way that the trajectory of the country right now makes you wonder, what are we in for? When the country's so divided that I think they were saying something like 30 or 40% of the country even thought that there may come a time when there could be a separation,
Mhm.
kind of a balkanization of the states,
Yeah.
kind of like how the Soviet Union fell apart. And heaven forbid there was a civil war, but people are so divided on so many things. What's that going to look like in the future?
Well, I,
And
I actually believe in a soft balkanization. Like, that was the intent, was that each of these states would sort of operate as their own country with their own militias, their own armies.
originally,
Um, yeah, that was the original intent. And then basically the federal government had two responsibilities, which was to respond to foreign enemies and protect the borders and regulate the commerce in between. So that's three: regulate the commerce in between
Mhm.
the different states. But man, so I support that, because then that means that the best state is going to get, the best results. They're kind of competing for each other,
Mhm.
but
But that was kind of what led to the first Civil War, and the North, under Lincoln, they wouldn't allow it, and it gave a lot of power to the federal government from that point
mhm.
forward. It changed everything. I mean, imagine what our country would be like today if the southern states had just become their own country.
Yeah,
You know,
how
that's
crazy, man.
crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, this whole civil rights issue has expanded, since the 1960s to include abortion, gay and lesbian, transgender rights, and it's a difficult thing. Um, Will you show the Trump sketch I just did?
Yep, I will pull that right up.
So this is one I also drew today in my sketchbook, and I like the quote. It's from his Mount Rushmore speech back in 2020, and he said, "We stand tall, we stand proud, and we only kneel to Almighty God." And what I really liked about that quote is the idea that that really we don't kneel to the government. We kneel to our conscience. We kneel to what we believe is right and wrong. And for me, that's God, and for a lot of Americans, it's that way. Um, and I like doing these sketches of President Trump. And people sometimes say, "Well, why? What do you worship the man?" I think highly of him for what he sacrificed and did to become president. He didn't gain anything from it. In fact, he lost probably almost everything. He could have walked into the sunset with being a billionaire and everybody liking him, but instead he sacrificed for this country, and I hope that he can get reelected. We'll see how that goes. I'm supporting him, but yeah, these are the sketches I like to do, and I like to do different political figures and people that are meaningful to me.
What do you think will happen? It seems my perception is that it's 50-50 between him and DeSantis right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any polls that show that personally. I think that it might be good for Trump to hurry and come out and announce that he's running, because then they'll see a strong surge one way or the other. Um, it'd be interesting because I mean, if they go to that primary and they're facing off, him and DeSantis, knowing the way Trump is, he's pretty aggressive.
Yep. Yep.
What kind of words are going to be said between them?
I don't think they're not going to do the debates, right? They're not doing the DNC RNC debates.
I don't think they'll do those kind of debates, but I'm sure that the Republicans will debate each other.
Republicans, yeah, I could see that. I just don't. If he throws his hat in, I mean, look, anybody who ran next to Trump, they got like cremated. Like it was an obliteration.
Except for Ben Carson. Those two, Ben
Yeah,
Carson,
they got along. Yeah,
they
he was
got
nice.
along good, respected each other. But boy, Trump just
Everyone else, I mean, little Marco, like he decimated those because they couldn't run.
Low energy Bush.
Yeah,
Bush.
yeah.
Oh,
Then he turned to Rand Paul. He's like, I've not made any comments about Rand Paul, but there's a lot of material to work with here.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the most entertaining political year ever. And telling Hillary that she should be in jail, and oh my heavens, so there's some crazy stuff to look forward to.
It was such a zinger too. He's like, right, you'd be in jail. Like it was like,
yeah,
but it didn't happen. And I think, there's only one thing where I'd be like, yeah, I'd like be so excited about Trump is if he went in there and he totally cleaned house.
He'd have to if he gets in one more term. He's learned a lot in the last 8 years, or by then, and he should clean house.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that if we take the House and maybe the Senate, we can do some of that. But I don't know. I don't know how many rhinos we're going to have to deal with. But
pretty much the entire party. There's only been a few stand-up guys in the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's hard to watch, but yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff to look forward to see what Trump's gonna do in the future and how he's gonna handle stuff, and boy,
Harold says
paintings, a lot of sketches.
Harold here says, I worry about DeSantis' foreign experience. I agree with that. He's done some really smart things with like Cuba and the refugees from communist countries into Florida.
That's true.
He does show signs of.
He has signs, but Trump didn't have any experience other than business dealings with some of the different countries. You didn't really.
Yeah, I watched. I'll make this a very short story. I speak Russian, and so I was watching this meeting that Obama had with Putin.
Mm-hmm.
And Putin, while it's like the first meeting he has, and Obama's trying to talk to him like an intellectual, and like he's saying all these really smarmy things, like, well, I feel so bad about how we've been in the past and our relationship, make it all. And and Putin's sitting there with his KGB buddies at this
You're
breakfast
laughing.
meeting. Oh, they were laughing, and at one point, Putin turns to one of his KGB buddies and essentially says that he could just squish Obama. Like, he's like, who is this guy? I could squish him. I cleaned it up. But he's like, who is this kid? Who is this kid? He just kept saying that. Like, this is a kid. And then Trump had a meeting, and it's unconfirmed, but it sounds like Trump, because Trump's the one who spoke it. Mm-hmm. So you don't know, because there's no other witness at this meeting.
Right.
But man, it was so good, because he said, if you invade Ukraine, if you do anything to America, I'm going to bomb those big, beautiful buildings you have in Moscow. Blow up those big, beautiful turrets. That totally sounds like
Trump was crazy. He was the bomb. He was
foreign experience.
He was born to do that.
Yeah.
The one thing that DeSantis has an advantage with is when he starts talking about how he handled the vaccines and all that. And I mean, that showed a lot of leadership. Mm-hmm. Trump was pretty much listening to Fauci and everyone. Not at first, but he did later. And that's kind of a weakness that I think people will try to take him on, but we'll see.
C. Mulcahy.
I don't know how to say this last name. Mulcahy.
He says it's going to be President Trump and General Flynn coming soon.
Ooh, interesting idea. Yeah. If they can stay friendly, a good ticket would be Trump with DeSantis as vice president, because
would be a good ticket.
It would, because after 4 years,
At that point, though, I would hope that the vice president is doing more than just a vote, because DeSantis has got a lot of energy, and I'd love to see that put to use. That's the only thing. I agree with that. I just want to see him using his energy for something. So
that's true. Well, boy, a lot of interesting things to talk about. This was a fun day for sketches and kind of thinking about the whole topic of racism. But next week we'll have something new. And until then, thanks for tuning in with us. And we'll see you later at the studio.